I am more than my physical body. Because I am more than physical matter, I can perceive that which is greater than the physical world.
Unbelievably powerful supercomputer that's running our reality, and we don't have a clue as to how to operate it.
The teachers are alive. They're not books. They are the very living essences of nature itself.
Turn in a little bit and get that motor to the pop.
This is Fringe FM, high vibrations, far out frequencies.
Did I claim to know the ultimate truth about life? I see that which has been made hidden as a part of a family that explores the consciousness. I'm the void walker.
Welcome to Lighting the Void.
All broadcasting live from the world's most famous beach on the world's most famous Fringe station. This is Lighting the Void. I'm your host, Joe Roop, and we're live on Fringe FM. It's 10 after 10 here on the East Coast, 10 after 7 on the West Coast. It is September the 26th, 2023, and we are live. Remember, when we open the phone lines up, the call-in number is 501-777-5631. Tonight, we are welcoming back the one and only Jason Quitt, fellow Void Walker and traveler of all things spiritual and consciousness. I've had him on the show a few times, and he's got a couple of new books out that I'm super interested in. So keep in mind that this conversation will probably get a bit deep into the realms of conscious exploration, as well as, studying ancient symbols. We're probably going to talk about sacred geometry. If you guys don't know who Jason Quitt is, and you're in this world, well, you should. You should by now, but if you don't, Jason Quitt has been studying various modalities and spiritual practices with teachers from around the world for quite some time, and he graduated from the Institute of Energy Wellness back in 2005 and began working with ancient healing techniques. And he became a student of shamanism. And you can check out his website at thecrystalsun.com. One of my favorite books that he wrote, I have right here with me, is Forbidden Knowledge. It was really what put him on the scene. And when I had my first out-of-body experience, there was one word that was going around. Here's a man that you got to talk to that understands it more about what happened to you, Joseph, and his name is Jason Quitt. And that was the first time I had him on the broadcast, and ever since then it's been a pretty awesome conversation every time he's been on. Now he's got a couple of new books out. The Egyptian Postures of Power book is out, as well as something we're going to be talking about tonight, Astral Genesis, which is the astrological keys to the gods, and that dropped February 2nd, 2023. And you can check out his website once again at thecrystalsun.com. Jason, thanks for coming on the broadcast. It's good to have you here, brother.
Yeah, it's been a time coming.
It's been Absolutely. A long time. Yeah, it's been totally a long time, man. And I think I've been, dude, like you were the person that I loved talking to when I was struggling with out of body stuff. Personally trying to get to this, because your book Forbidden Knowledge was inspiring to me, because this is like, that book was, oh man, this is where people want to go, right? This is where, like, if you want to be an out-of-body traveler or a conscious explorer or something like that, man, this guy whoever wrote this book, we got to talk to him because he's seen it. He's been there, you know. And then there was always a bit of skepticism, but the first time I talked to you, I was like, yeah, we got to follow what this guy's doing. And now you got this book out, Astral Genesis, and I'm curious about it, man. Like astrological keys to the gods. This sounds kind of like something that, you know, it's in the realms of Graham Hancock and people like that. Like, have you found something that nobody's like tapped into once again?
Yeah. This discovery came out of the left field, and I wasn't expecting it at all. In fact, during COVID, I had time to take some time. Couldn't go anywhere with the lockdowns and all that stuff because I'm in Canada. And I decided that now's the time I'm going to write the actual book for Egyptian Postures of Power. And there's 2 books to that. And one book covers the mysticism and the postures. And the next book was going to be about the moon. So I was going to kind of separate the books. And the moon book, which is the book that I'm still writing, it goes into the whole mystical aspect of, you know, what happens when you die. So, you know, you're living in the physical existence, and then your awareness and consciousness leaves your body and you're in a non-physical state. And what did the ancient people know about this transition into this other world? So I really wanted to dive deep into that subject matter for that next book on Egyptian postures. And I was really diving deep. Like I was going back to the Egyptian Book of the Dead, the Tibetan Book of the Dead. I was really interested in reading the pyramid texts. And it was through reading the pyramid texts that I started to get all this information coming to me. And my process in writing is, you know, I'm reading these ancient texts, and then I go and meditate on it and see if anything, you know, comes from it. And I was writing this chapter called The Brazen Serpent, which is a very biblical thing, you know, comes from the Bible and Numbers, about how when they were in the desert, the Israelites would get bitten by poisonous snakes and other poisonous animals like scorpions. And to heal them, what they did was they erected a pole and they put a bronze serpent on it. And they said, you know, if you gaze upon this serpent, this bronze serpent, then your wounds will be healed. And so I was kind of going into this kind of mystical area from the Bible of this kind of, by using your eyes and gazing up on this pole and the serpent, you would be healed. And I started to go down this kind of path of trying to understand this concept. And I started to bring in this other dimension to it, which is an astrological dimension to it. And I found that by bringing in this astro-theology and mapping this astrological code on top of Bible verses, suddenly the story started to make incredible sense to me. And I saw that there was a parallel. And this is a topic that, you know, many people have gone down. You know, astral theology is not new. It's just not really talked about much. And I started to go down this path, and other things just started to get a little crazy with this. I started to go back to the pyramid text, which is about 4,000 years old, 4,000, 5,000 years old. And I'm starting to read these ancient texts, and I'm not reading anybody's interpretations of them. I'm just reading the exact text of what the translations are. And I'm starting to see that in these texts, it talks about the afterlife of, it's like the original Book of the Dead. It's like, you know, what happens to you once you die and you leave your body, what you have to go through. It's kind of like, you know, the whole scene with Osiris and being judged with your heart and all these things. And as I'm going through this text, I'm realizing that this path is related to the journey of the stars. So again, we're getting this kind of astro-theology aspect to it. So as your spirit is leaving and you're traveling through the heavens, you're literally traveling through the heavens. You're going from these stars to these stars, and in each gate, in each star, it's a different God or a different understanding, or you have to go through different purification rituals to pass through these gates. And I started to apply this astrological knowledge to the Egyptian Book of the Dead and other things, and I realized that it was an allegory for the path of the sun moving through the signs of the zodiac. So this is a very, very ancient understanding of how the constellations move, how when the sun enters a different constellation, it has a different pattern of life on the earth, different seasons. And this was all reflected. And then what these ancient mystics did was they took these patterns of life, these yearly cycles of life, death, rebirth. And what they did was that they created these allegories and myths that went along with each season or each position of the sun or the moon in these constellations and made their myths. So this started to absolutely blow my mind that you could take the Egyptian gods, for example, and you could translate them into constellations. You can translate them into the path of the soul passing through the different gods to be reborn again as the sun coming up from the eastern horizon, just as the sun dies in the western horizon to enter the underworld. These are all symbolic references to long cycles of time from the stars and the sun. So this is where I started, right? And I hope you're following along with this, because it is kind of complicated if we don't really understand mysticism or don't understand path of the sun and the stars.
Well, maybe you can help me out here, because where I've come from when it comes to theology is I've understood the caste and the god systems as they correspond to the tree of life, but also, as they correspond to the Christ story, which is the solar story, right? We've all been taught that, but we all know that, and then I've talked to people like Micah Dank and other folks that show us this story too, there's a story that plays out, like this path of initiation and this story that plays out with the soul through each sign of the zodiac. But from what I'm seeing here is it's more solid than that. Somewhere along the line, sacred geometry, it's a real energetic thing. It's not just a story. That's what I'm getting from all of this. Am I off or am I close?
No, it's absolutely correct. It's one of the highest forms of mysticism is to see the above, so below. So as the earth changes, or as you're in a certain star system, or as the sun is passing through certain constellations, rising or setting in the east or the west, and the seasons, life on earth changes. So there's actual changes that you can observe on the planet that goes along with this pattern. And you yourself are a reflection of that. The human being is a reflection of those cycles. So as things change on earth and the sun moves through the stars, you are also affected and you are also bound by those energies. So this is the first kind of concept of astrology. They say, oh, you're born in this sign, or you have these influences, therefore you have these gifts and challenges. But it all came from understanding that as we move through the cosmos, and as the sun moves through the constellations and the earth tilts through the seasons, there are observable, measurable changes that happens to life on planet Earth. And what these ancient people did was they mapped those changes of those seasons and mapped them to correspond with where's the sun at this particular time of change and what stars are they under. So this was a huge undertaking that probably took thousands of years to even understand this. And great observations from very smart people that had a lot of patience to figure this stuff out.
Yeah.
And I think that because this knowledge was so profound and so, I'll say, difficult to comprehend because it is a lot of information, the way that they kept these systems alive is by creating myths and legends and religious texts that told a very simplistic story to the majority of people to carry forward. And then you had high priests or people in secret societies that, or wisdom keepers that had this information at another dimension. And they would initiate you into the knowledge that's really being portrayed in these myths and stories. And I think this is a very ancient way of passing information through. But I know Micah, and I've heard what he has to say with his map or his interpretation of the constellations of the zodiac and the stories of the Bible. And he's definitely onto something. He's definitely figured out a lot of things in regard to that.
Yeah. See, and my studies have been specifically, OBE and the occult, specifically the Golden Dawn stuff, which I've learned so many cool things through that it's all about, hermetics, which I know they got from ancient Egypt, right? They took this from Egypt, but it was the as above, so below, the original emerald tablet that taught us that, as above, so below. And the mystery schools had this stage of, the moon, the sun, and the stars, right? So once you were which is why there's 3 stages in all of the mystery schools that are kind of hidden. So once you were under the moon, you learned, kind of like the pentagram stuff. And this is more the occult, kind of, I guess, scary stuff, right? So you learn the pentagram stuff, which basically says you're in a flat plane. And then you started learning the hexagram stuff, which is all about the solar powers and energy. And you began to work in the astral realm. And then once you burst out of that astral body, which is really like this illusory plane that kind of keeps us here, then you were able to, be born again or be a star, so to speak, right?
This is the entire concept, is that these ancient mystics, they didn't believe, they knew that you were a star being.
Yeah.
All right. So this is, people talk about star seeds today and all these things. This is the original understanding that goes back thousands of years. You are a star being locked within a body. And that's what astral means. Astral literally means star. So when you say, I left in my astral body, what you're actually saying is I left in my star body, So they say you come from the stars, you're made of the stars. That is what your essence, your star, your Qi, your light body, your Ka is the stars. It's the energy and material that makes the stars. And that energy is housed within the physical body. And through understanding your connection to the source, through understanding the above and so below, you can experience that star body, that astral body. So this is really ancient stuff. This is not new age things at all. This is probably the oldest religions on the planet, or the oldest knowledge of spiritual existence on the planet. And this is why, for example, you were just talking about the different levels in the Golden Dawn, and you mentioned the pentagram, and where did these symbols even come from?
Right.
Well, the pentagram is the orbital path of Venus, the morning star. And who do we call the morning star? What is the other being that we call the morning star?
Well, depending on which verse of the Bible you're reading, it could be Jesus in Revelations, or it could be Satan, just depends.
Lucifer.
Yeah,
right.
It could be, Lucifer, right.
Right. So that is a very interesting thing, is that Jesus and Lucifer in the Bible, depending on what verse you read, both claim to be the morning star.
The bright morning star, yeah.
And the morning star is the bright star of Venus that rises before the sun in the east. So it was a very important star. And the orbital path of Venus takes on the shape or the geometry of the pentagram at 72 degrees. And, this is where we really get into this kind of astro-theology thing and relating it to the Bible, because when you look at the morning star, it travels in its path from being an observer on Earth. If you watch it over the days, it goes forward in the sky, and then it goes backwards in the sky. So it has a very weird movement in our skies to be observed. And as it goes backwards for 40 days and 40 nights. Mm. So this is when you go into the Bible and you're like, okay, Jesus was tempted in the desert for 40 days and 40 nights. As he's the morning star, he's going backwards 40 days and 40 nights, because this is the path of the pentagram. It's the same thing when Moses ascended the Sinai to get the tablets. How long did that take? It took 40 days and 40 nights. This is all symbolic of the movement of the morning star in the early morning hours of the sky that can be observed. So, when you're looking at symbols, and the conspiracy theory here is all these secret societies, what they have done to hide information like this is they've purposely demonized it themselves.
Right.
So they take something that is literal knowledge of movements of stars in the sky, and they've told the public that don't look at this, don't understand this. This is evil. You can't understand this stuff. And back then, that was also a way of gaining power and influence over large groups of people, because if you're a high priest and you know exactly that an eclipse is coming, and you can go out in public and tell your followers that, God spoke to me and he's very angry. And because you've sinned, he's going to show you that he's going to take away the sun tomorrow. And if you don't believe me, I'll show you. God will come and show that he's going to take the sun away tomorrow. And that would be a sign and wonders in the sky, that it was proof that the gods were talking through the priests, and to listen to them. So there's a lot of weird stuff when you really go back into the history and study these things. And you could even see it, when you're looking at the Golden Dawn or Kabbalah, that you have to be a certain age. You have to be initiated at a certain time in your life to actually understand these concepts. And again, it's reflected in the moon, the sun, and the stars. And why is that? Why?
Well, we can talk about that when we come back from the break, because that's a subject that I've been talking about for quite some time, and no better person to discuss it with here than Jason Quitt. If you want to check out his book, you can go to thecrystalsun.com. His book is on there. You can get it on Amazon. It's called The Astral Genesis by Jason Quitt. Also, the Egyptian postures of power. We'll get into that too, and why that stuff is important, and a little bit more energy talk. And we may open the phone lines up too. And I'm blasting Gunship all week because their new album's coming out. Make sure you guys send your support and donate to the Fringe FM if you can. You can also get the entire Magical Egypt, every product they have, plus a ticket to the summit for $99 by using the code word Fringe. We'll be right back. Stay with us. At thecrystalsun.com, that's his website, thecrystalsun.com. We're talking about his new book, Astral Genesis, and we've been discussing a little bit. We're kind of priming the information as we get into the book. You guys, I've had a lot of people on the show. You will not be disappointed. If you went to Amazon right now and grabbed every one of this guy's books, it would unlock a world of conscious exploration and void walking for you. That I can assure you. So, Jason, thanks for coming on again. I would like to ask you, why did you name the book Astral Genesis? Why was that the name you picked for it?
I picked that name because it all comes back to this understanding that you are a star locked in the physical body, and that the star has a cycle or a journey that is a reflection of our sun in the sky, the rising of the sun, the setting of the sun at noon, the most high. And as it travels through the constellations, it goes through its archetypes. It goes through its transformations. And the reason I use the word Genesis is because it is the genesis of creation, is the movements and cycles of the stars. It creates who we are, our life. And there's a lot of parallels to the story of Genesis, to the Bible, to ancient texts going back to ancient Egypt, to Sumeria, that are allegories or reflections of celestial cycles. So what we're doing is we're trying to connect this as above, so below understanding, these mystical concepts of life and death in general, and bring them together in one harmony, which is the cycles of time itself, cycles of time and space itself.
Wow. That's a pretty compelling thing to say. With so many people focused on, I mean, we've said this to each other every time you've been on the show. Oh man, it seems like more and more people are interested in astrology and, tarot or the mystic realm. But now it's ridiculous, bro. Like how many people, I wouldn't say aware, like are aware of the truth, but are tapped into like learning this stuff. It's on a mass scale right now. Like I don't think we've ever seen it before on the earth. Don't you think?
And that makes complete sense, because what you have in, let's say, occult sciences or mysticism, or even spiritualism, is that as the world becomes more unraveled, and I think I can say with confidence that our world is a little crazy right now in chaos.
Yeah, for sure.
That the more we separate ourselves from our spiritual knowledge of who we really are, this astral self within us, this star knowledge, the more we separate ourselves is the stronger this boomerang effect is. So the more we are being pulled in the direction of materialism, of false understandings and beliefs, the more people are snapping out of that consciousness and saying, this is nuts. This is, I can feel it in my bones that I'm being lied to. I could feel it in my bones that something is not right. And it's just a feeling that I can't shake. And then once people start to come back to this understanding, and I'm not talking about religion, all right? I'm not talking about dogma or scripture or anything like that. I think those are great if they can lead you to a place of understanding within yourself. I think all these books have a place in our lives. They're stepping stones. But what I'm truly saying is that the path is back to the stars. And I say this from a mystical standpoint. I state this from out of body experiences. And I also state this from a physical aspect of what are we trying to do now on the planet? We're trying to ascend to the stars. Elon Musk wants to go to Mars, right? And what did Terence McKenna say? Remember, he used to talk about the channeling and communication he would have with the mushrooms.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And he says that once a species starts to reconnect with these consciousness of the mushrooms and all these things, it's going to propel that species to become starbound. You know, was the mushroom channeling through him talking specifically about getting in a spaceship and then traveling through the stars to other worlds? Or is the mushroom, just like other type of sacraments in ancient religions, a door that allows you to understand that you are the star and that you are wrapped in the physical existence of Earth until you're not? And when you are not, you travel into the stars. And from a spiritual perspective, it's I don't want to say it's the stars itself that we can see in the physical world, but it's a spiritual reflection of the energies of those stars. So you're entering into another world that is still bound by these spheres of existence or spheres of consciousness that you can travel into when you're not being held within the physical body. So they say that everybody experiences this because everybody dies one day. And depending on where our consciousness is depending on the reflection of what we'll experience in that afterlife. But if you keep going back in time to these ancient civilizations and their understanding of what happens in death, it pretty much matches near-death experiences and what people describe today. And it's also what people describe when they're doing sacraments or plant medicines, when they have breakthrough experiences into other worlds. So this stuff is very ancient, very real. And the reason why people are waking up today more than ever is because we're being pulled so far in the opposite direction that something's going to snap in people.
Exactly, man. That's how I know we have souls, right? So the more you imprison somebody consciously and inauthentically, right? The more you box a soul in, the more it wants to rebel, right? The more it wants to come out, which there's a whole story in that with the whole Lucifer, Jesus thing too, right? So there's a knowing, and I want to dive into this book a little bit more in detail, but there's a knowing that when you begin to express your light into the world or your authentic soul into the world, the two things are going to happen to you. And it's told in the stories, the rebellion of yourself, the Luciferic rebellion inside you. And then once you start to put love into the equation and still be authentic at the same time, you don't give in to the temptations and all this stuff. The whole world, it may seem as if the whole world comes against you. Hell, it may feel like a martyrdom, but you're not from here, right?
Yeah.
And that's how you're born again. It's not like, well, I said this prayer and I'm born again. When I was a kid, they used to say that to you, raise your hand and accept Jesus. And I'm not trying to offend anybody. Accept Jesus into your heart and you're born again. But that was supposed to happen because that was the perfect metaphor for my journey from the time I was a child to understanding what the hell that really means as I'm coming into an adult, right?
And, think of a childbirth. Is that fun?
Hell no.
Or
it's not. It hurts sometimes, man. Yeah.
Right. So it's to bring life into the world. It comes from a place of extreme pain. You got to go deep to give birth. And I'm a man. I don't understand that,
Now, women understand it totally.
Women understand it.
Yeah.
Now, so it's this kind of rebirth through this kind of process. And if we go back to Forbidden Knowledge, the book that I wrote to come into this community, I had my baptism, is what I'll call it, when I first left my body. And that's the only way I could describe it. And it wasn't fun. It was basically kicking and screaming, terror and fear. And if the listeners don't remember or know my story, I'll just quickly get into it. Is that when I first started to have my spiritual awakening, it started with sleep paralysis. So basically, I'm stuck in my body at night. My mind is awake, but my body's asleep, and I'm basically pounding spiritually or mentally in my body to wake up. So, and it's very scary, very fearful, and I can feel a presence in the room. Sometimes I feel it walking around, and it's just it's not a good feeling. And then one night I just couldn't take it. Enough was enough. And I'm basically like rolling around in my body, like thrashing, or whatever my astral body is, or spiritual body, whatever you want to call it, is thrashing around in my physical body to wake up. And I pushed so hard to wake myself up that I popped myself out of my body. And it was exactly what we would talk about in a near-death experience. I found myself at the ceiling, looking down in the bed at my body. And it's a slap of reality. It's like, I know I'm not dreaming. I know this is not a hallucination. I just died. I'm looking at my body.
Yeah.
And like I say, it is a slap of reality. That world is so real that it's undeniable what you're experiencing. And then I noticed at the foot of my bed, there was a very tall being. It just looked like a giant shadow with form standing at the foot of my bed. And I thought this was the Grim Reaper to take me away because I died. And that scared me so much that I got sucked back into my body and woke up. And I would say that moment was my baptism into another world. I became a child again. I learned something new, and it came through pain, just like a birth. So these are all stages of experience that I believe are human experiences that all humans will experience one time or another in their life.
What do you think the one thing that the Egyptians understood that we have still yet, that maybe you're learning that we've still yet to unlock? Like, I'm looking at, your table of contents here, and I'm getting this book tonight, by the way, Decoding the Ankh. There's been so many theories as to what that ankh represents, right? And yet it's in all of Egypt, right? What is your theory on the ankh? What do you think it is?
I think it's exactly what it says it is. It's the key to life. And what is the key to life? It's the cycles of the earth and the sun. That's the key to life. And the ankh is the symbol of the movement of the sun and the earth in the horizon. Now, just me saying that is kind of weird. So there's going to be a whole explanation that goes behind that.
Yeah, because I can hear people in the background, some people going, no, like,
of course they're saying no. And I would have said no too a couple of years ago. But it's also the same with the pyramids. Like, everybody has an idea of what the pyramids are. And it's undeniable that the pyramids are an astrological clock. It's a monolithic clock that teaches us about cycles of time. And I can prove that. I could literally prove that's what it is. And I think I have proven that in the book. Obviously, it's multidimensional. It has many purposes, but as a timekeeping device, it works every single day of the year. And if you understand how it works, you can just stand in a certain place, see where the sun sets, and know what time of year it is.
Now, think about what it would take to build something like that. Not just the the logistics, but the time, the brain power, all that kind of stuff that went behind it. And knowing it, it's almost as if they knew no matter what happens to the earth, these will still be here. Right? They'll still be here.
It's my mind, even today, cannot comprehend the complexity and the level of understanding that went into just the calculations alone to build this. I'm not even talking about lifting and cutting granite, just the calculations alone to build structures in this design for it to have a purpose is so out of my element of consciousness that whoever designed this or had this knowledge is way above what we can comprehend today. It just like, it really does boggle my mind. I'm not even talking about how they move those blocks. Just the design and understanding that went into it is so advanced. It's so advanced. And even the geometry itself is, again, it mirrors creation. It mirrors the physical world. It mirrors the circumference, the dimensions of the planet, the movement of the planet, the movement of the sun. Everything was considered in that design. So it's such a complex understanding. And this is why so many have tried to decode the pyramid, and everybody knows we're trying to decode the pyramid, and it's just an absolute enigma. But I can say for 100% certainty, it is a giant megalithic astrological clock measuring the cycles of time and space based on the geometry of the earth and the distance between the sun, the moon, man. And it's insane. It's really insane to really think about it.
Man. Yeah, it totally is. And I know we haven't even begun, well, this is my Arkansas grammar. Begun to get into, is it began to get in detail about your begun? We haven't even.
I can started when we come back. I can start. We'll come back to the ankh, and then I'll expand on why I said that.
Fantastic. Well, also too, at some part in the show, if you want to ask questions, we have chat too, but we'll open up the phone lines too. If you want to ask Jason a question, which is totally cool, that'll be at 501-777-5631. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Listen, we need your support. We have to hit our goals. They're very modest. We're not asking for $2,000 or even $1,000. We're just a few $100s away from hitting our goal so that we can get all the bills paid here on the Fringe FM. You can go to fringe.fm and donate. You can also join the Deep Void for $5 a month. You get access to all of the shows, over 800 shows, commercial free, and any extra content that we've done. I have some guided meditations and astral path workings on there as well that I'm doing. They're leaned more towards a mixture between what I've learned from all of these people, including Jason Quitt. So I've taken what I've learned from Jason Quitt, William Buellman, Robert Monroe, what I've learned from the occult, and I've put it all together into, let's just say, the Astral Temple. There's courses on the tarot, all kinds of stuff there too. And don't forget about the Magical Egypt Summit. Chance and Venice over at Magical Egypt have given us, and only us, that code, right? So you get Magical Egypt Season 1, Season 2, Season 3, Women of Wisdom, the Thoth Tarot, Sexual Alchemy, The Great Work, and a ticket to the summit for the entire month of September. Used to be $199, but if you put in the code word FRINGE, you get 50% off. That's $99. So you can support the station in all kinds of different ways. We need it. Please do it if you can. Jason Quitt's here with us tonight. TheCrystalSun.com is the website. We are talking about his new book, Astral Genesis, and it's a fascinating conversation so far. And we're not even getting into the details. I could talk to Jason probably for about 5 hours and never fully just pick this man's brain totally apart, you know. So I'm glad you're still writing books, dude. You got to keep doing it. Just keep doing it, please.
Thank you.
So before the break, I was asking you about the ankh and what you thought about it. And there's a lot of theories on it. I've heard things that talk about the kundalini or sexual energy, or I've heard probably 4 or 5 different theories about the ankh. And you said earlier that it has to do with the sun and the earth, and we were going to expand on that when we came back.
Yes, and I wanted to share my screen. I know no one can see it but you.
Yeah.
but you'll have to enable
I'll
that.
relay that.
So, okay.
Yeah, let me see. So I need to, let's see how to do this. Allow, what is it? Can I just make you the host? Could do
I
that,
don't
right?
know.
Could probably do that.
I may take control.
There you go. Can you do it now?
All right. I got it. Okay. All right. So you see, I'm showing you a close-up picture of an ankh. And this is, I'm trying to remember, this is a gilded mirror case that was found in Tutankhamun's tomb. So if people want to look that up, gilded golden mirror case, ankh from Tutankhamun's tomb. And there's some very interesting symbology in this ankh. Okay. Now, you see in the center here, you have the scarab. And to the left and the right, you have two serpents coming out of a shen, which is a symbol of eternity or eternal cycles. And if you talk to Micah Dank, he always says that the scarab is really Cancer, the constellation Cancer of the zodiac, and it's on a blue lotus motif. And the blue lotus is the pillar of creation; is where creation comes from. And if you could see above the serpent's head and above the scarab's head, you see three suns, right?
Right.
Okay. So this is the key. This is the key to life. It's the three suns. Now, there is some hidden geometry here that you have to be initiated into. And what that geometry is the tilt of the axis of the Earth, which is 23.5 degrees. So from Cancer, like Michael Dank says, the scarab is the symbol of Cancer. If you tilt the Earth, we call it the Tropic of Cancer, right? The Tropic of Cancer. And then as you tilt it back up from the equator, it goes the Tropic of Capricorn. And those degrees of tilt is 23.5 degrees. And what that gives us is the cycle of the tilt of the Earth per year that gives us the 4 seasons. So we have the 2 solstices and the 2 equinoxes. So these are very specific dates of time that have to do with the movement of the Earth and the degrees in which the sun is in the sky, which changes over the year by 47 degrees, which is 23.5 degrees times 2. All right. Now, I'm going to come a little closer here, and I want to just show you something. If you draw a line from the base of the ankh, and you take this line and you put it right into the serpent's eye, this line is 23.5 degrees. If you take this line at the bottom of the ankh here and you bring it to the serpent's eye, it also equals 23.5 degrees. Now, if you notice, there's these 3 lines underneath the scarab. Okay. And I know your listeners can't see this, but hopefully they're following along with this image. If you follow these 3 lines under the scarab, it creates another line that goes directly into the sun, the center of the sun. And this line is 15 degrees. So what does this tell us? It's telling us that they knew about the tilt of the Earth and the position of the sun thousands of years ago. Before recorded history tells us they could know about the tilt of the Earth. And they hid it within their hieroglyphs. They hid it within their symbols. And if you know the key, which is usually the eyes, the belly button, the navel, the hands and the feet, if you know, if you look at these things and you measure from those points, especially the eyes, you will get, if it's a solar motif, you will get the number 23.5 degrees. So what this is showing you, what this ankh is showing you, is the 3 suns. And obviously we have the sun in the center, which is actually 2 suns, because you have to pass through the center, the equinox, twice per year. And then you go to the extreme of the north, which is a solstice, and the extreme of the south, which is a solstice, at 23.5 degrees. And that's what it's showing you on the ankh, of this ankh in particular. Now, I've measured many ankhs, and I'm going to have to show you a picture from my book, but just for you, just so you can see this picture. I don't know if you can see this picture.
Yeah, I see it.
All right. So when you measure the ankh, from the base of the ankh to the arm, if you draw a line from the base of the ankh to the arm, you get 23.5 degrees again. All right. So you have this code, this key that is showing you the tilt of the earth that creates the cycles of the seasons of the sun, from the solstice to the equinox to the solstice and back and forth. Now, the 15 degrees that I talked about is the sun moves through the sky. The sun moves through the sky 15 degrees every hour. Okay, so to measure the time of day, the sun moves 15 degrees in the sky per hour. Now, if you take your hand, and this is where we get into the cubit, which you were very interested earlier saying, how did I figure out this cubit thing? If you take your hand, if you take your arm and your hand and you stick it out, you outreach your arm and your hand in front of you, and you look with your eye to the palm of your hand to the horizon, that equals 15 degrees. So you can measure the time of day from your eye to your hand to the horizon. Okay, so your geometry, you are a reflection of creation. You're a reflection of the cycles of time and space in your physical body. Your body is the measuring tool. You are the measuring stick. And it's from your eye is the perspective. And this is how we figured out the cosmos, is the body is the measuring tool. So when you think of the hamsa, the hand with the eye in it. Okay. So you put your eye to the palm of your hand. You hold it out to the horizon, and you can tell the degrees, 15 degrees. And you could use your fingers, your digits to create other degrees as well, which is a little more complicated. But what I'm trying to say is, what if you can create a tool based on your cubits? Okay, which is your hand or your arm. So like the staff or the ankh. Okay, so like the Waz scepter or the ankh, these are designed from the cubit based on the arm of the individual and the hand of the individual. Now, what if you can take this ankh, put it in your hand, and hold it in front of you so your eye looks through that ankh?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
Okay. And you put that ankh on the horizon to the east. And you go to the rising sun, or you turn to the west and go to the setting sun. But you have to know exactly your directions to do this. And you will see where on that ankh the sun will rise from. The left arm of the cross, or the right arm of the cross, or right in the center during the equinox.
Crazy. I'm gonna now. Have you tested this? You've tested this, so haven't you?
Well, you can do this yourself just with your hand,
right?
What I'm saying is that the Egyptians were much more industrious when it came to this information, and they've based their measuring system on their arm and their hand. That is the cubit system. From the base of the elbow to the top of the middle finger is the cubit.
Yeah.
Okay.
I knew that one for sure.
But why is it the measuring system? Because it measures the cosmos. You are the measuring tool. All right. That's the secret. So you have the arm and the hand, and then you can divide the arm and the hand. So you have the, let's say from the base of your elbow to the tip of your middle finger is 1 cubit. But if you divide it at your wrist, you have your arm is 7/10 and your hand is 3/10. All right. So you're creating a division based on your own geometry. And again, the length of your arm from your eye, from your perspective, it's like, this is also the above and below. You are a reflection of the cosmos. You are built in the image of God. You know, this is that solar being, that star being of understanding. And it's all about this sacred geometry movement of the stars and our place in the universe. So
that's fascinating. You know,
this
because
evolves.
for the longest time, bro, people be like, you know what a cubit is? I'd be like, yeah, it's like 13.5 inches. Most people's arms from their elbow to the tip of their middle finger is around 13.5 inches. That's most people.
20.5 inches.
Right. So, well, yeah, I had the number. I'm totally off, but I knew the number at one time, right? And I thought that's what a cubit is. It's no big deal, right? But what you're saying is these measurements to the human body, especially the cubit, especially things like this, are really deeper hidden mysteries to show to. I mean, how else did they know? Did they figure this stuff? Because you're talking about people that were understanding precession, the tilt of the earth, the cosmos and stuff before Galileo, before Greece, before anything.
And that's why, you know, even in the Bible, you know, what do they say is know thyself.
Yeah.
And you will have your answer.
Yeah.
Because you are the mirror, you are the reflection. So these are the mysteries. And this, like I said, I'm just giving you the crack in the wall for the little light to come through, because this is a massive understanding and undertaking to really get these topics.
Maybe it was 18.5 inches. See, I got to get the tape measure out now. You got me wondering about this, right?
But this is the thing, is that the cubit was an average. All right. So let's say they measured like 100 Egyptians, and then they took the average and they say, okay, the cubit is this average 20.5 inches, right? And then what they do is they would measure the hand of the pharaoh, which is the 4 fingers. And what they would say is, okay, now those 4 fingers is the royal cubit. So they take the regular cubit, they add 4 fingers, which is the pharaoh, and then now you have the royal cubit, which is slightly more. So these measurements of the cubit, of the hand, the arm, the foot, the leg, like these are all reflections of your sacred geometry, were incorporated in the building of the pyramids. They're incorporated in the tools that were being used. You know, why? It's because, and why did it have to be so accurate? Because it was a timekeeping, space measuring device. So, you know, and we lost that knowledge. We really lost that knowledge. And, you know, you get into like the biblical times and it says, you know, like Aaron and Moses, they guided the Israelites through the desert. How?
The staff.
With their staff and their rod.
Right.
What is the staff and the rod? It's the cubit and the ankh. It's the Waz scepter and the ankh. They came from Egypt. They know this stuff. You know, how do they navigate these distances to other places? How do they know these paths? Because they were trained to be able to follow the sun in the sky, know the directions, know the stars. And by using those tools, the staff and the rod, they can now track their path to where they need to go.
And there's a lot more that you have, like in detail, about the ankh. Talk to me a little bit about the key of Shamash. What is that?
That is where I made a discovery of something called the solar ratios. Now, this, I don't want to say it's too complex. It is complex, but I can try to really bring it down. From the equator, all right, it's 0 degrees, right? We're at the equator at 0 degrees.
Yeah.
Therefore, the solstice is 23 degrees north and then 23.5 degrees south. Okay. As you move up into the northern hemisphere, the latitude changes, right? So as the latitude changes, the position of the sun in the sky changes as well. All right. So if you're looking up in the sky and measuring the sun in the sky, it's going to be very different if you're at 60 degrees north latitude than you are at 0 degrees at the equator. Very different sun in the sky, right? So this is what I did. The key to Shamash is a solar deity from Sumeria, ancient god. And he's usually depicted holding in his hand a tool that people have no idea what it is. It's like a rod that he's holding in his hand, and it has a circle around it. And people are always speculating, what is this? What is this rod? And what is this circle that is shown on the tablet of Shamash? And, you can look this up right now. You'll see exactly what I'm talking about. But anyways, when I looked at the rod, what did I do first? I measured it. I took the length of that rod and then I turned it and superimposed it over Shamash's arm. And guess what? It was the exact distance from the bottom of the elbow to the tip of the middle finger. So what does that tell us? That rod is his cubit. Okay, so that's a measuring rod of his cubit, measuring the sun. So what is the circle? That was the mystery. What is the circle? And what I found out was I found the path of the sun from where the artifact is. So from Urk, Sumeria, where the artifact was found, what I did was I went on the computer and let me just tell the exact, let me figure this out because I don't want to get this wrong. Yes. Okay. So Urk, Sumeria is at 31.3 degrees north latitude. So what I did was I plotted the sun in the sky. So where is the sun at winter solstice, equinox, and summer solstice at the latitude of 31.3 degrees in the sky? And I plotted that in the sky. And there are different heights in the sky over the year. The sun is at different heights in the sky. So I drew a line from the top of the sun to the horizon, top of the sun to the horizon to these points. And then I drew a circle at these points, and it gave me this ratio of 3 circles. I'm just going to put this to the screen so you can see it.
Gotcha. I see it. Yeah.
Okay. So it has 3 circles. So I took the ratios of those 3 circles and I superimposed it on top of the circle that Shamash is holding. And it was a perfect match. So the ratios of the altitude of the sun from winter solstice, equinox, and summer solstice matched the ratios of the circle that Shamash is holding in his hand. Okay. And then I'm like, okay, this could be a coincidence because this is like my first discovery. And then I decided to take these 3 circles and I looked at Shamash's symbols. So there's the symbol of Ishtar, the symbol of Shamash, the crowned, the crescent sun, which are these symbols. I know your viewers can't see it, but I'm going to show you.
Gotcha.
When I superimposed those ratios over the symbols, they were also a perfect match. So even back 4,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago, they knew how to measure where the sun was in the sky during the solstices and equinoxes. They knew what the ratios were of the height of the altitude of the sun. And they incorporated it into their measuring tools, and they incorporated it into their artifacts and art so that I can take the hieroglyphs, I could take the stones that they chiseled out measure them. And remember, it's a ratio. So, this could be a small pendant they wore around their neck, or it could be the size of a temple. It's a ratio. So it could be any size. But once you understand that they're using the cubit and the ratios of the sun and the sky, suddenly you have two keys now that can unlock the mysteries of these artifacts. And what blew my mind.
You realize Schwaller's not even talking about this kind of stuff, right?
No, this is undiscovered. This is, like I'm saying, this is new territory here.
This is awesome. Yeah.
And in my mind, like I say, this is a crack in the wall, because if what I'm saying is correct, and I have hundreds of examples worldwide, going back to Göbekli Tepe, okay? Going back almost 12,000 years, that they encoded these astrological ratios and degrees into their artifacts, into their architecture, into their myths and stories, so that they would not be forgotten, but completely hidden unless you were initiated into understanding how to read the language of the stars, which is geometry.
That's so crazy, man. This is insane. So, you have to keep going with this. You can't just open up the crack and then be like, all right, you guys figured the rest of it out, right? We need more from this, man. This is, there's more in the book for sure. You got tons of examples in the book too.
Yes. Right. Yes. And since I wrote the book, I found 100 more that are even more compelling. So I may have to do a revision of the book just to include better examples, because I keep finding better and better things. And every time, I don't understand something. So I'll get a symbol or something where I kind of understand what's going on. And then there's a part of it that it looks like it's a mistake. I've realized that there are no mistakes. So if something is off, I need to figure out why it's off, because there's something much deeper there to be found. So I've been surprised a lot, and I am still finding new things. But what I've found so far is that there is evidence to suggest that this information was fully formed going all the way back to Göbekli Tepe, which means this is older than our prehistory, that they knew about the stars, they knew about the tilt and axis of the earth. This is huge. History teaches us that they figured out these things just about 1,000 or 2,000 years ago at most. They figured out these things. What I'm saying is that it's fully formed and functional all the way back to Göbekli Tepe, and examples can be found on every continent of this world. Found in Japan, found in China, found in South America, Central America, North America, found all throughout the Mediterranean. So it's everywhere. It's in front of our faces, but we can't see it because we don't understand the astrological language that's hidden within it.
Yeah. Oh, this is fascinating stuff. We only got one more segment to go. So if you guys want to get your questions in, now's the time. Last short break of the night. TheCrystalSun.com is the website. The book is Astral Genesis, and this is by Jason Quitt. You can see, if you go to TheCrystalSun.com, you can actually, and you go to his books, you can see there's examples of what he's talking about right there on the website too. You can actually see it. So you can get in your questions at 501-777-5631, or you can hit us up in the telly. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Don't go anywhere. could be one of the greatest new discoveries of some of this ancient Egyptian architecture that Jason's talking about, where he's seeing these patterns that are based on things that maybe I don't know how. This is what I'm curious about, Jason. Like, how did someone like Schwaller not see this, right? As detailed as that guy was, I think he was more focused on the initiatory thing, right? Like the idea of Horus and that whole initiatory path. And maybe he just missed the geometry of all this, because I'm seeing what you're seeing here, what you're showing me. Even during the break, you're showing me stuff that it's like spot on. I mean, let me ask you this, actually. Was there a point where you thought, okay, man, it's like that movie 23. I'm starting to see patterns. Maybe I'm going crazy here or something. Did you ever think that for a second?
Oh, yeah. And there's a really funny story behind that. And Jimmy Church actually tells this story, because what happened was as I was working on this, and I first discovered these symbols when I was looking at the pyramid texts. And what I was doing was, because I was so into the pyramid texts, I was going to the Valley of the Kings, and I was looking at the different symbols on the wall, because in the Valley of the Kings and the Valley of the Queens, there are the most incredible artwork on these burial tombs. And it's about the Egyptian Book of the Dead, basically, the pyramid texts. And I was looking at this one symbol, and this one symbol was just blowing my mind, because it was a symbol of Horus and Set in the same body. So it's one body with the head of Set and the head of Horus, and they're looking in opposite directions. It's standing in a very strange way. And one of these symbols is they're standing in between three serpents on either side, looking in different directions. And there was another symbol where this being is standing, this double-headed Horus Set character is standing on a double-headed sphinx. And I wanted to copy this symbol for my book. And so I threw a picture of it on my computer, and I started to trace it out. And as I'm tracing it out, I started to notice these patterns within it were the same between these two symbols. And when I don't know why I did it. I don't know. It just came to me, just figure out what the degrees were. Because, you're always talking in like the Masonic terms, or it's like, oh, you're this degree, that degree. It's all about these different degrees. Mm-hmm. The square and the compass, it's all about degrees. So I measured the degrees of these angles, and it kept coming to the same angle, which was 23.5 degrees. And then I started to say, okay, this is strange. What is 23.5 degrees? So I look it up, and it's something that they teach us in elementary school. Like, this is basic knowledge of how the earth works, is the earth tilts at 23.5 degrees. So I said, okay, isn't that interesting that all these symbols, for some reason, are all designed in this blueprint of this 23.5 degree angle? And I started to just grab all these different weird hieroglyphs and started to apply this blueprint, this 23.5 degree blueprint to it. And lo and behold, all of these had it within it. And it didn't just have it within it. It looked like the symbol itself was designed on top of these degrees and angles, which is not a coincidence. If you change the degrees, let's say you change the degrees to like 50 degrees or 40 degrees, it doesn't work. It was only at this 23.5 degrees that it was a perfect match. So long story short, I'm like staying up night and day. I can't sleep. I'm just finding all these hieroglyphs, putting them together, applying this blueprint to it, and going, oh my God, it's a perfect match. Oh my God, it's a perfect match. And then I said, okay, let me go outside of Egypt. Let me go to Samaria. Let's go to other cultures and see if this is in their things as well. And then I'm like, oh my God, this blueprint, this 23.5 degree blueprint is found in Samaria. And then I started expanding it further and further around the world, and I'm starting to find this everywhere. So I'm kind of going insane at this point. So I call up Jimmy Church. I go, get on Skype with me. He gets on Skype with me. I go, let me share my screen. You have to
make sure you're not going crazy, right? You want him to...
I go, and he tells the story of this because I called him and I'm in my pajamas and my hair is standing up. Like I look, I think I had a beard. I look crazy, basically. Yeah, dude,
I could see you doing that for sure. Like you've been cracking out on this for a while, man. You want to make sure you're not, gone.
That's right. So I go, Jimmy, you got to like come on Skype with me. I got to just run some things by you. And he's like, okay. And I'll never forget it. He's like, calm down, crazy eyes. I'm here. This is what he said to me. He's like, calm down, crazy eyes. Cause I was like, staring and like,
bloodshot.
You gotta look at this, Jimmy. You gotta look at this. And so I ran him through a little presentation where I went through a bunch of symbols, and I showed him that if you join the center line dot from the feet to the hands, or from the eyes to the hands, or from this to there, it all comes back with the same degrees, which is 23.5 degrees. And then I showed him how this symbol, which I started to talk about, the Horus and Set symbol on the Sphinx, describes the cosmology and the blueprint for the Great Pyramids of Giza. And I put the map on top of it, overlaid it, and it was a perfect match as well. And it shows where the sun rises, where the sun sets, and it's a perfect match. So I said, Jimmy, am I going insane? Am I seeing things that I shouldn't be seeing because I don't know anybody who's talking about this? Am I going crazy? And he goes, keep going. It looks good to me. And finish this as fast as you can because we need to get it out there.
Well, dude, look, here's the thing. If there's anybody to call to make sure you're not going crazy before you go public with it, it's Jimmy Church, because that man's been through the ringer of like, you know what I'm saying, like guests and people saying stuff, and like, so he would be the guy to say, all right, man, let me double check this for you, to make sure you got what you got.
Not only
wasn't
that,
a bad idea.
He wrote the foreword to the book, and he wrote that story in the foreword because he's like, yeah, you came to me and I told you to go forward. So
yeah. Well, you should go forward. And I think these are the kind of, look, I think you should get in touch with Chance Gardner and Venice at Magical Egypt and talk to them. I definitely think you should do that.
I'm going on a show tomorrow night.
Yeah. So I think they would be massively interested in talking to you about this. And they're really good friends of mine. And I think that, if it wasn't for people like John Anthony West, Robert Schock, Laird Scranton, people like yourself that are willing to go out on edge and say, how many times do you think Robert Schock looked at the water erosion and was like, he knows what he's talking about, but surely he probably called somebody and was like, I'm just double checking. You guys see this, don't you? Right. Yeah. You see what I mean? Like, now I don't know if Schwaller did that because his whole thing was totally brand new, but
he was a trailblazer, and I have read his work. I absolutely love his interpretations of the symbols. And, I feel like we should all be, taking these works, taking this great knowledge that has been put forth that people aren't even picking up on today, which is a shame, and expanding on those ideas and those discoveries. Because even his wife, she wrote the book, Harbeck. It's one of the best books.
Oh yes,
it's one of my favorite books.
I have that book, dude, and I love. You're talking about the initiate Harbeck.
Yep. Yeah.
I read that book to my girlfriend at night sometimes, right? Because no one knows about that book, man. And I found that book. I can't believe you're bringing this up. Sorry, I got excited, but I found that book at an old bookstore in Arizona, one of those shoddy places where you like.
Same thing. I found it. I found
like,
it
what
in
is
a
this
place
doing here? You know,
I found mine in Asheville, North Carolina. That copy in some weird bookstore. You know,
that book really makes you wonder: did Schwaller get a lot of his stuff from his woman? Right, because she's super intelligent.
I will admit it, and I'll say that her books are way more spiritually stimulating than his books.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, she was on to something. She was on to something. So it's like I'll read a passage of that book and meditate on it because there's just so much deep knowledge in that book.
Well, look, man, look. So forbidden knowledge, what happened to you with forbidden knowledge has led you to this. I mean, bro, you've been on a journey, man. Like we've all been, I've had my own journey, but we've all paid attention to your journey too. Like you've been on a journey with this, and it's led you from out of body experiences to meeting entities, to discovering things about consciousness and geometry, to now seeing, I don't want to call them grid lines, but geometrical patterns that explain the nature of life and existence and the sun and the earth way before they started hanging people for talking about it. Right? Didn't they hang like Galileo, all these people like,
well, heretics.
Right.
and again, I think this is the oldest knowledge there is, the most precious knowledge there is. And this is why it was literally etched in stone in gigantic megalithic structures so that people can look at it and go, wow, that's very interesting. But only those that are initiated into the language of it will understand the purpose and function of what these things are and what it really means to the cycles of life and the cycles of life, death, resurrection, and the expansion of consciousness. It's all of it.
Yeah. Are you stoked again, man? You seem stoked about this, right? Like,
I'm stoked because it's still new to me. It's not even been a year since I wrote this book, and every person that I've showed it to are pretty stoked as well. But it's still very esoteric because this is not a mainstream topic whatsoever. So to try to explain this in a mainstream context is very difficult. So I can speak openly to people that are into consciousness, into ancient Egypt, into mysticism, Gnosticism, all these isms.
Like I was talking about my stuff, like the Golden Dawn a while ago, and you're like, I haven't even read that. And this stuff is talking about that, right? So it's clear there's an ancient wisdom that's behind religion, it's behind everything, right? It's behind everything that we know, no matter how it got separated. Last thing before we let you go, you guys need to go get this book too. Go to thecrystalsun.com. Check out his website. Read his blog, man. There's a lot of cool stuff on there too, but Astral Genesis is the new book. Last thing I want to ask you, and to leave this wide open so we can have you come back. I got your Egyptian Postures of Power book that has the Egyptian, just the poses where you explain them. But you actually have a full book that explains all of this, not just the pose book, right?
Yes. The Egyptian Postures of Power that you can now find on Amazon and my website it goes really deep into the entire history and mysticism of Egypt, of where this comes from. It also gets into philosophies of energy, of Qi, of how energy is circulated and cultivated and used, and our connection to the universe or the natural energies that flow through us, or the Egyptian gods of the Netter, which are just the natural forces of creation. And all of this is connected. And it was by writing the mysticism of this book that opened up my eyes to finding this discovery. Because I was actually writing the second version of the Egyptian Postures of Power when I made this discovery And this discovery was so big that I had to stop writing the Egyptian postures of power to the moon. I had to stop writing that book and then just write a new book specifically on the astral genesis, the codes of the sun and the stars, because I thought it was just more important to get that information out. And now I have to work on the second version of the Egyptian postures.
Yeah. Well, I'm look forward to all of your work, and thanks again for coming on the show, man. I really appreciate your work. We all appreciate your work because we know it's genuine, it's authentic. We know how passionate you are about discovering these things, and it's a real pleasure to have you back on the show, brother. Thanks for coming back.
Thank you. And just quickly, I'd like to just say that I'm doing a workshop coming up with Portal to Ascension, and it's on astral projection. It's a workshop. That's October 21st. And then also I'm going to be at Stairway to the Stars in Las Vegas and Luxor, November.
That place is so cool.
I think it's November 10th to the 12th. That is going to be huge. That's a huge, huge event. Everybody is going to be there. All the speakers are going to be there.
That one's called Stairway to the Stars?
Yes. Put on by Disclosure Fest. And Jimmy Church is also putting that on. So, and it's going to be huge. Is that, Luxor, Las Vegas. So
that hotel is awesome. I love that hotel.
It's going to be amazing. So, and you can find all my stuff on Amazon, and you can find it on thecrystalsun.com.
Right on. There you go, guys. Make sure you grab the book, follow Jason's work. I'm sure if you got any questions, you can hit him up at his website. Go check him out at these events. Give us your feedback, too. We'll be back tomorrow night. We're going to have a special guest on, as well as Rich West is coming on Thursday. Make sure you support the Fringe FM. Thank you guys for listening. Good night, guys. Sweet dreams.